Hey guys, I break down the most jaw-dropping finds from Antiques Roadshow. Only the best, no filler. Plus, I give my take on their current value. What do you think they're worth? Drop your guess in the comments. A sword like this doesn't just end up in a display case. It has a journey, a story, and a family that has carried it forward. This remarkable piece was originally purchased at an estate sale by the guest's friend, an avid collector with a keen eye for historical treasures.
Brought it back to Eugene, and a couple years later he found himself in a little bit of financial straits, and so he offered to sell it to me, and I bought it from him, and I've had it ever since.
Upon further research, the guest uncovered an astonishing connection. This sword traces back to Tsar Nicholas II, the last Tsar of Russia. Nicholas II was the last reigning emperor of Russia, King of Congress Poland and Grand Duke of Finland from 1894 to 1917. Unlike traditional Russian arms, which typically follow a distinct aesthetic, the ornate decorations on this sword suggest a strong Western influence. Its masterful design features blue and cream enamel, but the true centerpiece is the dazzling array of diamonds set into the handle. Drawing the blade, the appraiser reveals a monogram of the Tsar himself, finely engraved into the steel blade, a testament to its imperial origins. A sword like this was never meant for battle. It is a presentation sword, likely a coronation gift to Nicholas II. Flipping the blade over, the appraiser points out the hallmark of the famed Caucasian arms maker Zunov, a name synonymous with masterful craftsmanship. Given its exquisite details, the appraiser speculates that this may have been Zunov's finest work. However, the sword does have some condition issues. The silver enamel on the lower part of the scabbard is missing, and there is visible damage near the tip of the blade. Even with these imperfections, a rare piece like this would still command a retail estimate of.
And even in this condition, at auction, a conservative price might be $75,000 to $100,000. Whoa!
The item on display is the 1864 Union Officer's Presentation Dress Sword, which is not just a weapon, but a symbol of respect, leadership, and distinguished service. According to our guest, this sword has been in the family for generations, originally belonging to his great-great-great-granduncle, Colonel Greathouse, who fought in the Civil War. Colonel Lucian P. Greathouse was an officer in the Union Army during the Civil War, serving with the 48th Illinois Volunteer Infantry Regiment. Born in 1842, Greathouse enlisted young, quickly rising through the ranks due to his leadership and bravery, and he fought in key battles like the capture of Fort Henry, the Battle of Shiloh, and the Siege of Vicksburg.
Are you familiar with his quote?
To paraphrase, he was told by the rebels that, look, you're outnumbered, you're beaten, and he basically said, beat hell, the fight has just begun.
This Union presentation sword was gifted to him by the men and officers under his command, reflecting the deep respect they had for him.
By the men and the officers of his command. That indicates that he was well thought of, and the fact that they spent a great deal of money at the time for this sword speaks very well of him.
Crafted by Klauberg, a German manufacturer known for exporting blades to the US, the sword features decorative, high-quality blades often adorned with elaborate engravings and markings. Klauberg supplied swords to both Union and Confederate forces, with many featuring high-quality blades and hilt designs pioneered by Schuyler, Hartley, and Graham. Schuyler, Hartley, and Graham was a leading arms dealer in the mid-19th century, known for supplying weapons and military goods during the Civil War. Another notable feature of this sword is the guard. It is crafted with silver-plated brass and features intricate detailing, including garnet stones, with one set in the dragon's eye motif. Unfortunately, the sword's blade has suffered significant damage over the years, with rust and pitting from moisture causing much of the original gold plating to wear off. Despite this, its historical and collectible significance remains high, and with proper restoration, it could fetch around.
I would estimate a retail value in the neighborhood of $12,000.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.
This Civil War sword, forged in conflict, carries the legacy of bravery and sacrifice etched in its steel. The sword belonged to the guest's great-great-grandfather, Morgan Lewis Smith. Morgan Lewis Smith was a Union brigadier general in the American Civil War. At the outbreak of the Civil War, he raised the 8th Missouri Volunteer Infantry, of which he was elected colonel in 1861. After the war ended, he was presented this sword by the citizens of Vicksburg.
At some point after that, he was put in charge the city of Vicksburg. The city was under turmoil. He was there to bring peace and civility to that city.
This sword is an extraordinarily ornate presentation piece for the general. There's an interesting inscription on the scabbard.
It has a presentation on the scabbard. We've got his name and information there presented by the citizens of Vicksburg in 1865.
Another intriguing inclusion in this sword is the presence of two maker's marks, one of which is Collins and Company.
And then it was sold retail by Tiffany.
What's more, this sword comes complete with its original walnut case, which is a rarity in pieces like this. The guest also brought with the sword a portrait of Morgan Lewis Smith, overlooking a map of the city of Vicksburg. According to the appraiser, presentation swords are an interesting market, and their value is derived from the beauty of the artifact itself.
There's value that either adds or detracts based on the individual of what they did. And in this case, this is a very well-regarded individual. It is very specifically personalized for him.
In retail value, given the provenance of this historical sword, it would command a substantial price of
Between $40,000 and $50,000.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing.
1937 marks the golden age of cinema, paving the way for one of the greatest films ever made, The Wizard of Oz. This American musical fantasy, produced by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, was based on Frank L. Baum's 1900 novel The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. L. Frank Baum was an American author, best known for his children's fantasy books, particularly The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, part of a series. The guest acquired these pikes, used as movie props in the film, from an auction company specializing in Hollywood memorabilia. These weapons belonged to the Winky Guards, the loyal henchmen of the Wicked Witch of the West. The Winkies' striking blue uniforms, inspired by Russian Streltsy attire, made them an unforgettable presence on screen. Costumes and props were designed by renowned American designer Adrian Adolph Greenberg, known simply as Adrian. With 15 Winkies in the film, the exact number of pikes produced remains uncertain. In the 1970s, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer auctioned off studio props, with one of these pikes selling for $7,500. The pikes are in excellent condition, making them highly sought after by collectors of film memorabilia. An estimated auction value for these two Winky pikes would be in the range of...
And two of them would bring in excess of $30,000.
Excellent.
On display, we have a remarkable Bissonnet Confederate presentation sword. This historic piece belonged to the guest's great-great-grandfather and has been passed down through generations.
With the stories associated with his having the sword, and also his beautiful wife, my great-great-grandmother, wrote about the time he spent during the war in some of the fighting around the city of Mobile.
Confirming its authenticity, his name is finally engraved onto the blade. The stories of his wartime experiences are deeply tied to this sword, particularly in the city of Mobile, a history passed down by his wife, the guest's great-great-grandmother. The blade itself is beautifully etched, and when turned over, the mark of Bissonnet, who originally crafted it for the guest's ancestor, is revealed. Bissonnet was a highly skilled engraver and jeweler based in Mobile, renowned for his expertise in etching Confederate sword blades, and he was considered one of the finest in his craft. This particular piece was likely made before 1865 in Mobile, Alabama. The guard features a classic cast brass design with intricate floral patterns, along with hand-applied CS letters. Though the sword remains a stunning artifact, it does show signs of age, specifically rust near the tip due to the loss of the upper part of the scabbard. Thanks to the exceptional craftsmanship of this sword and its rich history, an appropriate insurance value would be
for $30,000.
Seriously? $30,000? Oh, wow. We need to... I've had it hidden in the attic. I think I need to put it somewhere safer than that.
A warrior's grip, a craftsman's touch, and centuries of mystery. This blade carries more than just steel. This sword has been passed down through generations, originally belonging to the guest's great-grandfather, who served with the Union Army during the American Civil War.
And who was he?
His name was Colonel John B. Reed. He fought in the Civil War and was stationed down in Louisiana and was wounded down there and held prisoner.
The story behind it is nothing short of captivating, as the guest recounts the heroic exploits of her ancestor on the battlefield.
And how did he get this sword?
After he was wounded and held prisoner, the rebels kept his original sword. So he was shipped home to heal after he was released. The town collected money to buy him a new sword.
Although not an officially issued weapon from the war period, the sword was a token of appreciation for his bravery and service. The appraiser immediately recognizes its significance and begins to unravel the history behind this remarkable piece. It was crafted in Solingen, Germany by Klauberg, a renowned company known for producing high-end swords.
During the Civil War, war meant big business. They imported things from overseas, lots of things, everything from buttons to swords. They even brought over cannons.
One of the standout features is the gold wash on the blade, a detail that speaks volumes about its quality and craftsmanship. The sword's handle is made of silver, while the scabbard features brass mounts adorned with intricate eagle decorations. Adding an extra touch of refinement, the scabbard ring, used to attach it to a belt, has a unique twist, a hallmark of superior craftsmanship. At some point in its history, the sword pommel cap was adorned with a ruby, but over time the gemstone was removed by the guest's family as it changed hands.
Yes, it was a ruby, and he had several granddaughters, and one of them pried the ruby out and made a necklace.
Really?
And I wish I knew where it was, but I do know that there was a ruby at one time.
Tying everything together is an inscription on the sword's top mount, which solidifies its provenance and historical value. Aside from the missing ruby, the sword is in impeccable condition, and given its rich provenance, it would have an insurance value of...
I would insure it for $6,000.
Okay, wow, that's great.
What we have on display is the 1864 Civil War statue hilt presentation sword. It wasn't just a weapon, but a symbol of honor and esteem. According to our guest, it was passed down through her father's family, who were of German descent and settled in Missouri.
In 1862, he joined the Union Army, 30th Missouri Infantry. And they were sent to Louisiana and Mississippi. And so this was presented to him by his Louisiana friends as a token of their esteem in 1864.
The guest's father, Lieutenant Louis Beerwith, came to America and enlisted in the Union Army, joining the Shamrock Regiment. The name Shamrock reflects the strong Irish heritage of many of its soldiers, who were part of the large wave of Irish immigrants that arrived in the US before and during the war. The inscription on this sword makes us wonder what Beerwith must have done to stand out among his comrades, especially in a regiment largely composed of Irish soldiers, to earn such an honor.
The presentation reads, presented to Lieutenant Louis Beerwith by his Louisiana friends as a token of their esteem, July of 1864.
Referred to as a statue hilt due to its intricate sculptural design, this sword features one of the elaborate styles found in Civil War presentation swords. While the sword's hilt lacks the gemstones found in the most extravagant examples, the craftsmanship is exceptional. However, time has taken its toll, the blade's etching has faded, and some elements are missing, including part of the extended guard. The sword was retailed by Schuyler, Hartley & Graham, one of the foremost military outfitters of the era, though the blade itself was likely crafted in Germany. Despite its condition issues, this piece remains a significant and valuable artifact, and at auction, it is estimated to be worth between...
At auction, I would estimate that this sword would be worth $10,000 to $15,000.
Wow, great.
And considerably more if it was in slightly better condition.
A silent witness to history, this sword once gleamed in the hands of a warrior, its steel bearing the weight of battle, honor, and an untold story waiting to be uncovered. The guest brought in this Civil War sword, passed down from her great-great-grandfather, General Stephen McGroarty, along with a picture of him in uniform. Stephen Joseph McGroarty was an Irish-American soldier who served in the Union Army during the American Civil War. A testament to his resilience, at the Battle of Peachtree Creek on July 20, 1864, McGroarty's left arm was shattered at the elbow by a Minie ball early in the fight. Yet he remained with his men until the battle's end. According to the appraiser, this is a presentation sword, an exquisite piece crafted by Clauberg of Solingen, Germany, and given to McGroarty in honor of his service by his men. Remarkably, this sword is one of the highest-grade pieces Clauberg ever produced. One of its most striking features is the etched battle engagements, including one of the most significant names in Civil War history, Gettysburg, the bloodiest battle of the war.
We see more information about what he did, where he was, the people that presented the sword to him.
This sword was identified as a Clauberg piece thanks to the maker's mark on the ricasso. Not only is this sword a remarkable piece of American history, it also features intricate designs around it.
With floral patterns and a panoply of arms, but probably the nicest feature of the sword is this beautiful Lady Liberty statue hilt.
Given the provenance of this sword and its exceptional craftsmanship, its auction value is estimated at...
You've got a sword that's going to bring somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000. It's just a wonderful, wonderful piece, and it's fabulous that it stayed in the family.
A family heirloom with a warrior's past, this sword has journeyed through time, from the battlefield to this very display case. The guest's great-grandfather, a Confederate captain, passed down not only his sword, but also that of a captured Union captain.
This is his sword. This is the sword of a captain from the Union side that he captured in the Battle of Petersburg in 1864.
Years after the war, an unexpected turn of events brought the two former adversaries back together, leading to the Union captain bequeathing his sword to the guest's ancestor. Accompanying the collection is a letter from the Union captain, expressing his wish for the guest's ancestor to keep the sword and pass it down through his family.
You say, "You have my sword. Friend Johnson, keep it. If you have boys, let it go to them as a trophy captured in a fair fight. I am teaching my boys to respect Southern men who fought for their convictions."
This collection stands as a powerful symbol of reconciliation and the unification of the United States after the Civil War.
It's still here, and it's nice to be able to see two individuals who in one moment are trying to kill each other.
That's right.
And the next moment you see these tender acts of kindness.
The first sword, belonging to the captured Michigan Sharpshooter captain, is a private purchase European-made German sword, adding an international element to the collection. Surprisingly, the second sword, carried by the guest's ancestor, is a simple yet historically significant US model 1850 foot officer's sword. Also included in the collection is a rare sword belt featuring the distinctive Confederate spoon and wreath buckle, a design known to have been crafted in New Orleans. The historical context and profound backstory behind this collection elevate both its sentimental and monetary value. While the letter from the captured captain is an insightful artifact, it is a transcription rather than the original document.
And so this is shortly near his death, and she was putting together all his remembrances from original letters that, as you say, don't exist anymore.
All these pieces remain in remarkable collectible condition and would undoubtedly attract significant interest from historians and collectors alike. If this extraordinary collection were to be presented at auction, it would carry a conservative valuation of.
Here today would be between $20,000 and $25,000.
That's surprising, but great. I mean, we aren't looking, obviously, to part with it, but that's good to know.
This guest presents one of the most remarkable collections of swords you will ever come across. All were inherited from her great-grandfather, Captain John Hetherington, who served as a bird and sharpshooter in the Civil War. The first sword is a true piece of history, as it appears in the photograph of the guest's ancestor. According to family lore, this very sword was struck by a bullet during battle, bending the blade but ultimately saving his life.
A piece of the sword lodged in his hand, and that's why he had to leave the army. And eventually it crippled his hand right up.
The appraiser is astonished by the guest's ancestor's record as a bird and sharpshooter, an elite distinction on its own.
So they weren't employed like regular infantry. They were sent out in company-size elements and in smaller groups. These guys were the designated marksmen of their era. So they would be looking specifically for Confederate officers, the members of artillery crews. They were important as skirmishers. And doing all this work, they had a very, very high casualty rate.
All the swords in this collection are Civil War officers' swords, but the appraiser notes it is unusual for one individual to possess so many. The sword on the bottom is a private purchase piece, made in Germany, likely bought from a small outfitter's shop.
This is kind of, if you go to the corner store and buy the cheapest sword you can get and still be an officer, that's what you would end up with.
While the sword in the middle, by regulation, should never have been in the possession of a bird and sharpshooter. It is an 1850 staff and field sword, another private purchase piece that could be easily acquired. The first sword, an 1850 foot officer's sword, may not be the most ornate, but its history as a literal lifesaver makes it invaluable.
On Jerusalem Plank Road at Petersburg, he's carrying this sword, and we can see on the back end where the bullet has actually wrecked the thing, and it probably never left the scabbard after that day.
The accompanying photograph, a post-war cabinet card image, solidifies the provenance of this entire collection. At auction, this impressive collection, with its impressive provenance, would carry a conservative estimate of
$15,000 to $20,000.
On display is a highly decorative and exquisitely crafted presentation sword, a true work of art rather than a typical battlefield weapon. Unlike its contemporaries that are destined for combat, this sword serves as a symbol of valor and distinguished service. This remarkable piece is an heirloom, inherited by the guest from her late husband, and it had been in their family for generations.
My deceased husband inherited it from his great uncle.
Do you know where he got it?
I have no idea where he got it, other than he did write a notation to him that he had picked up two swords off of the battlefield at Verdun, France.
The appraiser believes that this sword was crafted in London due to an inscription on the blade.
The loyal Crayford volunteers, to their much esteemed Commandant, John Henry Taylor, Esquire, in testimony of their high sense of his attention to the discipline and respectability of the Corps.
The guest agrees with the appraiser that it was most likely made in Birmingham, England, by the renowned firm of Woolley, Deakin, Dutton and Johnson.
Well, the sword is probably made in Birmingham, England, by the company of Woolley, Dutton, Deakin and Johnson, which were well-known makers during the period, and it's from the early 19th century.
It was likely made by the Deakin, Dutton and Johnson firm. This company produced blades etched with intricate patriotic motifs, royal ciphers and elaborate decorative patterns. This particular sword boasts a lavishly engraved gilt and blued blade, featuring the cipher of King George III. King George III was King of Great Britain and Ireland from 1760 until his death in 1820. Furthermore, the sword's scabbard is equally impressive, adorned with gilt brass mounts and an engraved coat of arms, reflecting the prestige of its original owner. At auction, this exceptional piece, given its rich history, would easily command a price of...
This would bring somewhere around $20,000 to $30,000.
Gee.
Is that a good place to start?
That's a good place to start, absolutely.
A relic of war, a token of victory. This piece wasn't just carried home, it was earned on the battlefield. This guest's father acquired it during the war in the Vomero section of Naples, Italy.
In the Vomero section of Naples, after a bombing during the war, it was found. And he brought it to the people that were in the building that was bombed, and they said to just take it. He sent it home, and we've had it in our home for over 60 years, to my knowledge.
According to family law, the sword was believed to be a medieval bronze weapon, but the appraiser quickly sets the record straight. Rather than medieval, this sword actually dates back to the first half of the 17th century. It is a Pappenheim rapier, a style popularized by Count Pappenheim, a German field marshal who fought for the Holy Roman Empire during the 30 Years' War. The sword features distinctive cutouts on both sides of the hilt, making it ambidextrous, along with an expanded guard designed to provide excellent hand protection. The rapier is a highly versatile weapon, with its long, slender and lightweight build allowing for both cutting and thrusting in combat. Despite family accounts describing it as a bronze weapon, the sword is actually made entirely of steel, with a dark patina suggesting it may have been exposed to fire at some point. An indistinct marking on the ricasso offers little insight into its maker, but the sword remains in remarkable condition. Given its historical significance and state of preservation, an auctioneer would conservatively estimate its value at...
would fetch around $3,000 to $5,000.
That's very significant. Thank you very much.
Swords are stunning works of art, featuring intricate designs, patterns, and craftsmanship that inspire awe and admiration. This sword on display has been passed down through different generations in the family of this guest. The sword is believed to be a Confederate sword based on its construction. Confederate swords were often seen as symbols of pride and loyalty among Confederate soldiers. Swords like this were made by various manufacturers, resulting in a range of designs, including cavalry sabers, artillery swords, and officers' swords. Interestingly, the manufacturer of this particular sword is William J. McElroy.
William J. McElroy made swords for the Confederacy, and if you had enough money, you could actually go in and he would make you a specific sword.
Oh.
William J. McElroy was a sword maker and cutler, known for producing high-quality swords during the mid-19th century. McElroy's swords are renowned for their exceptional quality, balance, and craftsmanship.
It's artistic, all the way down. It's beautifully done. He was one of the best in the business.
On the reverse side of this sword, there is an inscription that reads J. Knight Jr., an initial of the original owner.
He was with the 7th Mississippi Infantry Battalion. Each company had their own little nickname, and they were the Beauregard Defenders.
It was not uncommon for swords from the 19th century to have the owner's name or initials engraved on the blade or hilt. Furthermore, the sword features its original grip and wire, while the scabbard is made of leather and brass, all of which contribute to its historical significance and appeal. In today's retail market, the value of this William J. McElroy sword is estimated at...
Today would retail for about $10,000.
Really? Wow. I'm glad I didn't try to recycle it or something.
Forged in the fires of war and carried by soldiers through the chaos of battle, this Civil War sword stands as a testament to bravery, sacrifice, and history etched in steel. The guest brought in this sword, which originally belonged to his grandfather's great-uncle, a Union Army officer in charge of the hospital in Washington, D.C. According to the appraiser, this is a model 1840 medical staff officer's sword, crafted by Schuyler, Hartley & Graham. Schuyler, Hartley & Graham was the largest firearm dealer in the United States in 1860. This company was founded by Jacob Rutson Schuyler, Marcellus Hartley, and Malcolm Graham. Jacob Rutson Schuyler, upon the incorporation of Bayonne, New Jersey in 1869, became its first board president. Marcellus Hartley, an American arms dealer, was appointed as an agent by the Union Army to purchase weapons from Europe during the Civil War. One of the sword's key features is the green sash, standard for medical personnel. In a retail setting, given the provenance of this sword, it would command a substantial price of
Retail value of $10,000, possibly $12,000.
Not every family heirloom fits in a jewelry box, and a typical example is this sword on display. This sword has been passed down through generations, carrying tales of courage, honor, and perhaps even fortune. Engraved on the scabbard is a presentation to its original owner, Gustavus Stanley, a cavalry officer in the American Civil War. Following his death in service to his nation, the sword was returned to his family and has since remained in their possession.
He was an officer, fought in 3 different regiments, but the last one was the 2nd Cavalry, Maine. After his death, the sword and a lot of the documents from the company were sent back home to my family in Maine, where it's been.
This is a Civil War presentation cavalry officer's saber, given to the guest's ancestor by the men of Company F. The sword is in remarkable condition, featuring an elegant acid-etched engraving along the blade. A federal eagle prominently etched on the blade further confirms its authenticity as a true Civil War cavalry officer's saber. The maker's mark on the ricasso identifies it as a German-made sword, crafted by the renowned Klauberg Company. The sword's guard is cast entirely in brass, featuring an ornate and beautifully designed hilt and grip. Given its historical significance and pristine condition, a sword like this would retail for an estimated
would be between $8,000 and $10,000.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's great.
This silver-mounted Revolutionary War sword on display originally belonged to Colonel Oliver Spencer, who received it as his dress sword. Colonel Oliver Spencer was an American military officer and judge who served during the American Revolutionary War under General George Washington.
Served in the Revolutionary War.
Yes.
A fairly prominent figure. He served in I believe, the battles of Monmouth and Brandywine. He had an illustrious career.
An ordinary dress sword, attributed to George Washington, carries a profound historical significance rooted in war. George Washington was a founding father and first president of the United States, serving from 1789 to 1797. Since the early 1800s, the guest's family has preserved this treasured heirloom. The sword holds historical importance as it dates back to the American Revolutionary War, which took place from 1775 to 1783. While this particular piece bears no maker's mark to confirm its origin, its distinctive features suggest American craftsmanship. The sword's design includes a lion's head pommel with a beautifully flowing mane, a characteristic often found in high-quality swords of this period. According to the appraiser, its style closely resembles the work of John Bailey, a renowned swordsmith from Fishkill, New York. John Bailey was widely recognized for producing exceptional swords during the Revolutionary War era, and notably, he even crafted swords for George Washington himself. Other notable features of this piece is its steel blade, silver fittings, and a leather scabbard adorned with silver mounts. As an American Revolutionary sword with good provenance, in an auction, it would have a value of.
If I had this auction, I would easily put it at around $10,000 to $15,000.
Very nice. That's wonderful.
A family heirloom with a warrior's past, this sword has traveled through time, from battlefield to display case. Passed down from the guest's ancestor, this is a truly remarkable battle sword with deep historical significance.
When I was a young boy, I remember it hanging in my grandfather's den, and then it went to my father, and when he passed away last year, I inherited it then.
The appraiser emphasizes the importance of provenance for swords like this, as the market is flooded with replicas and fakes. Etched into the sword's steel blade is the name of its maker, W.J. McElroy. A brilliant entrepreneur during the Civil War era, McElroy was known for crafting swords and buckles, boldly branding his name on each piece. This particular example is his Confederate cavalry officer's sword, a rare and highly sought-after model. Astonished by its presence, the appraiser notes that this is one of the rarest swords a collector could ever hope to acquire. The sword features a sand-cast guard with intricate floral patterns, a clear indication that it was made for an officer. Its handle consists of a wooden core wrapped in high-quality leather, secured by a single strand of copper wire, a testament to its fine craftsmanship. Bringing it all together is the sand-cast pommel cap, reinforcing the sword's sturdy construction. The blade itself is a masterpiece, featuring ornate decorative etching, a signature trait that set McElroy apart from other makers. Intricate floral and geometric engravings, along with national Confederate flags, adorn the blade, enhancing its striking visual appeal. Even the scabbard carries a matching design, further elevating the uniqueness of this extraordinary piece.
Stands it out from all the others. This one, it's as good as they get. I'm not at a loss for words very often in my life, but this is a sword that will put you there.
In this pristine condition and with its rich history, the sword would command an insurance valuation of approximately...
I would insure this sword for $50,000.
Oh, my Lord. I'm speechless.
This sword carries a powerful legacy. It belonged to our guest's great-great-great-grandfather, who served in the Mississippi Cavalry during the Civil War. The sword's design suggests it was issued to an officer, following the staff and field officer's model. Also, the letters on the brass guard were applied after casting, giving it the distinct floating CS look that collectors recognize instantly. What makes this piece even more fascinating is the fact that it was manufactured in Memphis by Thomas Leach & Company, also known as Memphis Novelty Works. Thomas Leach & Company was a key Confederate arms manufacturer during the Civil War, known for producing high-quality swords, sabers, and military equipment for the Confederate States.
Also known as the Memphis Novelty Works Company. Very famous company in Civil War collecting.
At first glance, some might dismiss it as just an old rusted sword, due to the visible rust, missing wire-wrapped grip, and broken tip. But with historical artifacts like this, condition isn't everything. Provenance and its rich history add immense value, far beyond its surface wear. The presence of the CS engraving on the guard, signifying its connection to the Confederate States, makes this sword a rare and highly coveted find among Civil War collectors and historians. Given the abundance of reproductions and excessive polishing or restoration in the market, keeping it in its original untouched state preserves its authenticity, which collectors truly appreciate.
But when you get into the cleaning aspect of it and the polishing, it all sends up a red flag that maybe they're covering up something.
According to the appraiser, if this sword were to be insured, it would be valued at...
I'd want to put $7,000 on it.
Wow. Okay.
Dug out from a dusty collection at an estate sale, this sword is a relic from a time of honor, warfare, and masterful craftsmanship. What makes this piece particularly intriguing is that it's crafted from a swordfish bill, likely fashioned in a New England port. The appraiser is unable to determine whether it was the work of a single artisan or a collective effort, but the craftsmanship speaks volumes. Given the nature of its design, the sword would have been made after the sailor's return, meaning the intricate painting was likely added at a later time. While many variations of this type of sword exist, they all share striking patriotic motifs, a detail the appraiser highlights. Familiar with numerous versions, the appraiser identifies key similarities, while also pointing out the distinct elements that set this piece apart. Based on its design and craftsmanship, the sword was most likely created during the Centennial period, between the 1870s and the early 20th century. The guest suggests that the complexity of the handle indicates a later origin, but the appraiser confirms that it is original and was carefully carved from wood. Examining the paint colors and wear patterns, the appraiser notes that every component aligns with the characteristics of an authentic piece from this era.
The blue in this with the blue here, and the wear pattern is perfect. There's nothing that anybody has done to that to distress that surface.
Despite some visible cracks, closer inspection reveals no paint inside them, confirming that the aging process is genuine and not a recent addition.
And that's a good sign that somebody didn't take something old and put paint over top of it. Sometimes when you have something old, they'll paint it and then they'll put stain over it and they'll actually make it look worn. But this, I think this is a straight ahead, honest thing.
Folk art swords of this caliber and condition hold significant value, with an auction estimate of
$2,000 or $3,000.
Oh, nice. Very good.
Man, you're a lucky duck.
Swords have been used throughout history for combat, self-defense, and ceremonial purposes. This sword was purchased by the guest's father when he was 12 years old. Interestingly, this sword was made by Thomas Griswold & Co. Thomas Griswold & Co. was a prominent American sword manufacturing company founded by Thomas Griswold in 1834 in Griswoldville, Georgia.
They went into business in 1861. They were a big retailer down in New Orleans that owned almost a city block. They sold everything from silverware to guns to swords.
Thomas Griswold was an American industrialist and entrepreneur who introduced new manufacturing techniques and technologies. Thomas Griswold & Co. produced a wide range of swords, including cavalry sabers, infantry swords, and officers' swords. Coincidentally, the appraiser notes that this sword is an artillery sword. The artillery sword was specifically designed for artillery personnel in the mid-19th century. Interestingly, this artillery sword was appraised by the guest in the year 2000.
I was going to buy insurance on it one time. An appraiser wrote me an appraisal for $10,000, and of course he tried to buy it for me for $10,000, so I decided not to.
In today's auction market, this Thomas Griswold sword will fetch a price of.
In today's world, it's probably worth more like $8,000.
That's bad. So you don't have to buy as much insurance.
There you go. I like the way you think.
This sword, a fierce blend of craftsmanship and legacy, echoes the battles of the past with every swing. The design is nothing short of extraordinary, with intricate details that speak to its remarkable history. Notably, the blade is German-made, showcasing the high-quality steel of its time.
They were being imported in big numbers. They'd ship barrels of these over, and sometimes they would be hilted here, sometimes they'd be hilted in England and shipped over.
This sword features a stunning Boston hilt, and the sword itself once belonged to Captain Josiah Pratt, a respected local leader. Captain Pratt was a prominent military figure during the American Revolutionary War, and a respected citizen in his community. He, along with his descendants, served as town selectmen, further cementing his legacy. This sword is a finely crafted design that reflects the skill of early American swordsmiths. Owning such a piece would have signified both status and authority in his time. Although the sword is missing its original wire wrap, the pommel and ferrules remain intact, and they both retain the craftsmanship that is unmistakably Bostonian. Given the sword's impressive provenance, its auction value would easily be.
It would probably be in the $8,000 to $12,000 range at auction, and that's wicked cool. It is.
I love it.
You know, when I saw it and I saw the story, I went, oh my God, this is fantastic.
With a keen eye for antique arms, this guest scored an incredible find at a pawn shop, a sword with deep American roots and a story to tell. This isn't just any antique sword, it's considered the originator of all American swords, a piece that dates back to the American Revolutionary War. Far predating the Civil War, this sword is estimated to have been made circa 1765 to 1785. It is a classic example of a cavalryman's sword from the Revolutionary War, and its design shaped the future of American military blades. Running down the center of the blade, we see 3 deep grooves, often misidentified as blood grooves.
A lot of people will call those blood grooves, right? But that's incorrect. Those were actually started back in Japan centuries ago as a way of lightening and strengthening the blade.
This detail immediately tells the appraiser that the blade was crafted in Europe, where the finest metals were sourced during that period. Blades like this were imported to America and assembled locally, resulting in the historic weapon we see today. One of its most astonishing features is the handle, made from a single piece of cast brass. Upon inspecting the sword's guard closely, we can see some obvious casting flaws, but the outer surface is expertly finished.
That's because it was a necessity that they get these swords into service. So you finish what you can see, and you leave plain.
The grip is hand-turned from American hardwood, adding to its authenticity, while the cast brass pommel cap secures the entire structure together. In this wonderful condition, this rare Revolutionary War sword would command a retail value of approximately.
This sword today would retail for about $4,500. Wow.
This remarkable sword, believed to be a Texas artillery sword, has quite an interesting story behind it. It was gifted to our guest's father-in-law more than half a century ago.
It was given to my husband's father back in the mid-50s by a man who said that he found it when he was working on the construction of the San Jacinto Monument back in the mid-30s.
This sword features the Lone Star of Texas, symbolizing its heritage, but was made in Cabotsville, Massachusetts by Ames Manufacturing Company. The Ames Manufacturing Company, a leading 19th century US arms maker, gained fame for producing high-quality swords, sabers, and edged weapons for the military and state militias. As the top sword maker of that era, Ames produced these for the state of Texas, basing the design on the Roman-inspired Model 1832 short artillery sword.
It was made by the Ames Manufacturing Company, the most famous sword maker of the day. They made them under contract for the state of Texas.
However, what sets this sword apart is its rarity. Unlike the thousands of federally commissioned swords, only 40 Texas contract versions were made, making it a true collector's gem. Crafted with a sturdy cast brass handle and an iron blade, the sword was built for durability, with the blade running through the handle and flaring at the end to keep it secure. That said, a few condition issues affect its value. The original leather and brass scabbard is missing, and the blade has been resharpened multiple times, slightly altering its original width. Additionally, it once had the date of manufacture and the Ames maker's mark near its base, both of which have been worn away over time. Despite these factors, expert opinions on its value vary. Some estimate it could sell for around.
They thought that the sword would bring about $2,000.
The appraiser believes that its rarity and historical significance could bring its value closer to
$3,000. It's all in the eye of the beholder.
Terrific, thank you.
From the hands of a soldier to the hands of a collector, this sword has traveled far through time. It has been passed down through the Guest's family for generations, once belonging to an ancestor who served in the Union Army during the American Civil War.
I brought my grandfather's Civil War sword. He fought in the Union Army in the 26th Regiment for Illinois.
Solidifying its provenance, the scabbard bears a presentation engraving at the top, a mark of honor and distinction. The sword is identified as a model 1850 staff and field officer's sword, set apart from lower-ranking soldiers' weapons by the U.S. inscription in the guard. Designed for battle, the sword features a metal scabbard with a brass guard, emphasizing the noble service of the Guest's ancestor. Adding to its significance, this particular sword is tied to the famous 26th Regiment of the Illinois Infantry, a unit known for its remarkable contributions during the war.
They fought at the Battle of Vicksburg. They then joined General Sherman on the march to Atlanta and then over to the sea in Savannah, Georgia, and all the way up through the Carolinas.
At the end of the scabbard, there's a deep indentation that the Guest believes to be a bullet hole, but the appraiser offers another explanation.
And that's a good question. The scabbard is made of steel, and they add the brass. This is called a drag, and that was held on by a screw. And if you hit the bottom of the scabbard, it drives that drag up, and it breaks off that screw. So that's the hole where the screw went at one time.
On the handle, we find the hallmark of Ames Manufacturing Company, a renowned arms maker based in Chicopee, Massachusetts. The scabbard's ring remain intact, a detail that speaks to how this sword once hung from the belt of a soldier in the field. Decades of use and the impressive service history of the 26th Illinois Infantry Regiment are evident in the worn condition of the sword. With such a strong provenance and historical significance, this piece would carry an auction estimate of
between $3,000 and $4,000.
Thank you. And now I've proved my mom wrong that it was not a presentation sword.
A blade forged long ago, passed through generations, and now brought in for appraisal. The Guest shares the impressive history behind this sword, but what do we know about its true value? It originally belonged to the Guest's great-great-grandfather, who served as the consul of Bavaria, a fact confirmed by the accompanying appointment certificate. Through research, the appraiser discovered that the Guest's ancestor also founded the 27th Pennsylvania Regiment, famously known as the Philadelphia Flying Artillery. The sword itself is a remarkable presentation piece, gifted by the men of the Philadelphia Flying Artillery to General Max Einstein.
And it was presented at the time also by the governor of Pennsylvania and Simon Cameron, who eventually became Lincoln's first Secretary of War.
Bearing the hallmark of the Ames Manufacturing Company on the back of the scabbard, its origins are firmly established. The appraiser notes that this particular piece represents the pinnacle of craftsmanship from Ames, a leading sword manufacturer of its time. The sword features an original silver grip, intricately adorned with floral and geometric patterns, while eagle designs embellish the crossguard and pommel cap. Adding even more significance, the appointment certificate confirms that the Guest's ancestor was made consul to the King of Bavaria. This document is of great historical importance, as it bears the signature of former U.S. President Abraham Lincoln, perfectly intact with deep, unfaded ink. Lincoln was the 16th President of the United States, serving from 1861 until his assassination in 1865. Dated 1861, early in Lincoln's presidency, this certificate pairs beautifully with the sword, enhancing the historical provenance of both. An insurance valuation for this exceptional sword would be in the neighborhood of
So I'd insure it for $15,000.
The framed appointment, with its clear presidential signature, carries an insurance value of
It's something you would need to insure for around $5,000.
That's good to know.
Fantastic.
Forged for the front lines, this artillery short sword is more than just steel. It's a battle-hardened relic that once echoed in the chaos of war. The Guest presents a sword believed to be a rare Texas-issued blade.
It was given to my husband's father back in the mid-50s by a man who said that he found it when he was working on the construction of the San Jacinto Monument back in the mid-30s, where the Battle of San Jacinto was fought back in the early 1800s.
One of its defining features is the iconic Lone Star at the top, symbolizing the state of Texas. According to the appraiser, this sword wasn't crafted in Texas, but rather in Cabottville, Massachusetts. It was produced by the renowned Ames Manufacturing Company, the most prestigious sword maker of its time. These types of swords were made by the company under contract specifically for the state of Texas.
It's patterned after the model 1832 short artillery sword. It would have been made prior to the Mexican War.
Since this was a state-issued contract rather than a federal one, only 40 of these swords were ever produced, making it an exceptionally rare find. Its craftsmanship is striking, featuring a handle of cast brass. The iron blade is securely fastened through a peened construction, ensuring durability in combat.
Originally, it would have had a leather and brass scabbard that sheathed the sword when it wasn't in use. That's missing.
Another fascinating detail, the blade itself has been sharpened multiple times over the years, slightly altering its original width.
And at one time, it would have had the date of manufacture at the base of the blade. It also would have had the Ames manufacturing mark.
This suggests it was not merely a decorative piece, but a weapon that saw real use. Given the provenance and extreme rarity of this sword, its value at auction would be...
I think that it would bring closer to $3,000.
Terrific, thank you.
Steel and sentiment. This sword has been in the guest's family for generations, carrying with it a legacy of service and history. According to family law, the sword was used in the Spanish-American War, a conflict in which one of the guest's ancestors participated.
He was in the Spanish-American War, and I think he lied about his age. I think he was 15 and he enlisted, and he was in Cuba. So we have a lot of medals and some letters that he wrote and watercolors that he did when he was in Cuba. Sword's just kind of been with that collection, passed down through the family ever since.
However, while the guest is uncertain of its true origins, the appraiser quickly identifies it as a model 1832 short artillery sword. This particular piece was manufactured in 1843 and bears the hallmark of Joseph C. Bragg, a U.S. government inspector responsible for ensuring the quality of these weapons. During this time, swords were rigorously inspected, and those that failed to meet standards were often sold privately or assigned to state militias and smaller contracts. Another key hallmark is found on the handle, belonging to William A. Thornton, an inspector specifically assigned to evaluate the quality of the sword grips. Turning the blade over, the appraiser uncovers yet another hallmark. Nathan P. Ames, one of the most esteemed sword makers of the 19th century. The appraiser advises the guest to confirm the exact year of manufacture, as this particular sword predates the Spanish-American War by 55 years, disproving the family's long-held belief.
There are several research places where you can go and see the actual production date of this sword because Ames kept meticulous records.
Oh, really?
So they can tell you to within 100 swords how many they made there.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Instead, this is a short artilleryman's saber, a model widely produced throughout the 1830s, 1840s, and up until the 1860s. Adding to its significance, the sword comes with its original scabbard and belt, an uncommon find that enhances its value. The leather of the scabbard differs from the belt, with the former being tanned leather, while the latter is buff leather, a material treated with oil for durability. Interestingly, buff leather became rare after the Civil War, as it was typically treated with whale oil, a substance known for its tendency to combust spontaneously. With its impressive provenance and near-complete set, this remarkable Civil War-era collection would command an estimated auction value of...
It would bring between $3,000 and $3,500.
Wow, that's amazing. That's great.
This 18th century Indian hunting sword was purchased by our guest's grandfather from an antique shop near Swindon, England in 1953.
Around 1953 when he was stationed there for the Air Force. And that's about all I know. My grandma's had it ever since.
What'd your grandmother say about it?
She didn't say very much. She just asked me to take it to the show and see what you guys would say about it.
However, this isn't just any old sword. It's a shamshir, a hunting weapon crafted in India. Primarily designed for hunting large game such as tigers, boars, and deer, the shamshir could also be used in battle. The hilt is adorned with Cavalry work, a technique in which gold is inlaid into iron to create intricate floral patterns. This piece features remarkable detailing, including a parrot-shaped pommel with a small goose's head above it, and a long Persian poem inscribed across the surface.
Including a rather lengthy inscription that's on there. And the inscription is a poem in Persian, but it's a beautifully made sword.
The blade itself is made of Damascus steel, known for its distinctive grain, often referred to as watered steel. Despite its age, the sword remains a masterpiece of craftsmanship, making it a treasured heirloom passed down through generations. A piece like this is highly sought after today, as more people begin to appreciate the incredible skill behind these blades.
Very popular now because they're beginning to understand the complexity of the way these blades were made and the workmanship, involved in them. And they're just very, very fine quality pieces of work.
That being said, in an auction, this piece, even in this condition, would be worth.
Really? It's worth about $3,000.
Okay.
These kind of swords are very, very popular now.
Presented here is a sword that once stood at the crossroads of history, its steel forged for battle, its blade etched with the legacy of a warrior who carried it through the fires of war. The guest brought in this sword, which was discovered in a warehouse that her grandfather-in-law purchased in Columbus, Mississippi in 1930. According to the appraiser, this sword is visually stunning, a true work of art. Among its features is the carving of an eagle on the sword's hilt, which is a symbol representing Colombia.
And it says, Estado Unidos de Colombia, which is the United States of Colombia.
These details are crucial as they help date the sword, as this type of design was only used in Colombia between 1861 and 1886. This sword also bears a maker's mark, tracing it back to Schuyler, Hartley, and Graham.
And not only did they do swords for the American Civil War, they were one of the premier retailers. It was them and Tiffany, and they made swords that when you saw it, you said, wow.
Schuyler, Hartley, and Graham was the largest firearm dealer in the United States in 1860. The sword features gold on the blade, a gold wash on the handle, and a shagreen grip made of ray or shark skin. Highlighting the blade, it mirrors the design found in a regular cavalry or officer's sword. This sword also features a mythological face, often referred to as Medusa, with serpents radiating from it. What's more, the sword also came alongside its original scabbard, which further enhances its value. Given its quality and provenance, in a retail setting, this sword would be valued at
between $5,000 and $6,000 in a retail situation.
Wow. I'm surprised. I really didn't think it was that much.
Inheriting military items can prompt owners to reflect on the sacrifices made by their relatives, fostering a deeper appreciation for their service. These items, a sword and an old photograph, belong to the maternal grandfather's brother of the guest. The sword is identified as a Confederate officer's sword, a ceremonial weapon carried by officers of the Confederate States Army during the American Civil War. Notably, the style of the pommel cap of this sword immediately identifies it as a Confederate sword, specifically as a Boyle and Gamble sword. Boyle and Gamble was a prominent sword manufacturing company based in Richmond, Virginia during the American Civil War era. It also features a type of grip commonly known as a single strand wrap or a single wire wrap,
as opposed to federal swords, which tend to have a double strand or kind of a braid of wire on it.
The scabbard of this sword was further subjected to a process of disassembly, inspection, and reassembly. On the other hand, the photograph on display is an ambro-type portrait of the guest's relative, John Robert Selfridge. He was a member of the Henry County Infantry, which joined the Confederate States Army and served in various campaigns and battles.
To fight. That particular organization was involved in a lot of hot fights. They were at Second Bull Run, they were at Antietam, and then they were at Fredericksburg.
This ambro-type photograph of a Confederate soldier on its own will fetch a price of,
in particular an armed Confederate officer, the image is a $3,000 image.
While the Confederate officer's sword will command a price of.
The sword in today's retail market would bring approximately $5,000.
It's pretty good. Pretty good.
What if this sword, with its intricate craftsmanship, could tell the untold stories of its past? The guest brought in this sword, which was gifted to him by a friend of his. This sword is a typical Vietnamese sword, with a tapered tip making it suitable for thrusting. Its intricate features include the scabbard, which is made from lacquered wool inlaid with mother of pearl, while the sword's guard consists of a small metal plate, adding to its overall appeal. Additionally, the sword also still has its original scabbard, which is made from wool and adorned with intricate inlays. The blade is made from high-carbon steel, prized for its strength, durability, and ability to hold a sharp edge. At auction, this sword, given its design, would be valued at.
At auction, I would expect this sword to sell for about $3,000.
Wow. Wow, that's wonderful.
Presentation swords have been a symbol of respect, gratitude, and achievement for centuries, bestowed upon individuals for their bravery, service, or accomplishments. This ceremonial sword exhibited on the show was purchased by the guest's brother-in-law in 1962.
He bought it because our last name is engraved on the blade, Tennant.
What's the first name on it?
Elmer.
Interestingly, this sword was used by the guest who cut her wedding cake many years ago. The sword represents the iconic Model 1860 sword, known as the Light Cavalry Saber. This model is a historic American cavalry sword designed for the U.S. Army's mounted units. It is designed to be lightweight, making it ideal for cavalry use. Notably, this sword bears an inscription that reads, "Presented by Company L, 2nd Infantry WNG 1896, referring to the Wisconsin National Guard, WNG. The WNG is a component of the U.S. National Guard, with a rich history dating back to 1839. The recipient of this sword was from Ashland, Wisconsin, who had previously founded the Ashland Rifles, and this sword was given to him in appreciation. Interestingly, the eagle on the sword was cast in brass, but an artisan later added detailed chasework by hand, enhancing its intricate features.
The regular ones will have plain guards with cast eagles. It's nice and easy to cast a solid brass eagle.
Furthermore, the handle is made of pewter, which has been silver washed to give it a luxurious appearance. In today's auction market, considering this sword's rich history, it would easily command a price of.
It's probably worth somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000.
Wonderful. That's great.
This militia sword, worn with pride and forged for battle, carries the spirit of those who fought to defend their cause. This sword was purchased by the guest in an auction sale from a local collector for the price of $200. According to the appraiser, this sword dates back to the 1830s or 1840s. This sword is a militia officer's sword, likely crafted in continental Europe. Interestingly, even after a century of its creation, the sword still retains most of its components, further enhancing its value.
It's condition, because here the horn grip, normally you find these chipped.
Additionally, this sword retains most of its original gilding on both the scabbard and the hilt.
Also remarkable is this chain, which was generally pretty fragile.
On the sword's blade, we can see the intricately done etching, a common practice from the era the piece was produced. The delicate patterns and motifs reflect the craftsmanship and artistic expression of the time. Such details not only enhance the sword's visual appeal, but also provide insight into its historical significance. At auction, given its intricate design and historical significance, this sword would be valued at.
I think at auction it would probably fetch $1,000 to $1,500.
Okay, great. Super.
With its origins firmly rooted in the 19th century, this sword is an extraordinary example of historical significance. The sword is officially recognized as the Model 1840 U.S. Medical Officer's Sword. Inscribed in bold lettering on the crossguard is the abbreviation MS, signifying medical service. In addition to the crossguard, the blade itself also features an inscription reading USMS. Adopted by the U.S. Army in 1840, this sword was specifically designed for medical officers, more suitable for ceremonial purposes than actual combat. The sword served as a beacon of hope and compassion amidst the devastation of the American Civil War. It reminded soldiers that even in the darkest moments, there were still those who cared for their well-being. This sword tells a story of courage, compassion, and sacrifice that continues to captivate collectors and historians alike. Today it is a highly sought-after collector's item, cherished for its historical significance and emotional resonance. Given its rarity and historical significance, this piece would likely command a retail price of.
It's a piece that would retail for about $2,500.
Very nice, thank you.
What we have before us is a rare and storied Union officer's commission sword, an emblem of honor, power, and the turbulent battles that shaped a nation. The guest brought in this extraordinary sword that once belonged to his great-grandfather, along with his commissioning documents from the Civil War.
Before the Civil War, he was a student at Virginia Military Institute, and when Virginia and West Virginia split, he had to resign from VMI, enlisted in the 14th Regiment of the West Virginia Volunteers to fight Virginia.
According to the appraiser, this sword is a European import Model 1850 officer's sword. This sword could be French or German, likely from Solingen, Prussia, if it is indeed of German origin. While it is not maker-marked, the distinct style of this sword confirms it is not a US-made piece.
So, if you didn't have a lot of money, you would often buy a less expensive imported sword. These swords were really more a badge of office, not really a fighting weapon.
Its craftsmanship and design elements align more closely with European influences. This suggests it was likely imported and carried by someone with access to fine foreign weaponry. Furthermore, this sword's blade is etched with patriotic symbols, a feature that makes it even more desirable.
American eagle, the panoplies of arms, the shield of Columbia, all the patterns that would be appropriate to a sword intended for the U.S. military market.
Remarkably, this sword retains its original scabbard, a blue steel scabbard with brass mounts, featuring 2 suspension rings designed for attachment to the sword belt. Given the direct link of this sword with the guest's ancestor, its insurance value, considering its exceptional condition, would be...
Insure these items, I would probably insure it in the $3,000 to $5,000 range.
Well, thank you.
As a relic of a bygone era, this vintage knife embodies the essence of history, its presence evoking the echoes of distant battles and the whispers of forgotten heroes. The knife has been a cherished family heirloom for generations, with a rich history that dates back to the guest's great-great-grandfather, a distinguished USCT sergeant who served during the American Civil War.
The 96 USCT that your ancestor was in was formed from a lot of enslaved men who then, once they were freed, once the army had come through, joined the Union Army.
This knife, exhibiting distinct characteristics of aging, is a classic example of a Confederate Bowie knife, highly esteemed by collectors. Consistent with traditional Bowie knife design, this example includes a false edge on the blade. A distinctive characteristic of this piece is its half-tang construction, which features a single integral grip rather than the more common two-piece design. Like a tiny sentinel, the counterguard stands watch, its simple form belied by the robust rivets that hold it firmly in place. While the blade is notably heavy, its balance is commendable, even if its overall construction appears somewhat primitive.
A southern thing, the way that they're made fairly crudely, but they're big and bulky and look really mean.
Okay.
Now,
remarkably, this knife has remained intact throughout the years, and its thin iron scabbard has also survived, a testament to its exceptional preservation. It's incredible that this knife has lasted so long and still looks so good. It's like a piece of history comes to life. Due to its outstanding condition and provenance, this piece is considered a highly valuable addition to any collection, with an insurance value of...
For insurance, you might want to think about a $6,000, $8,000 insurance policy on it.
Okay. Interesting.
Thanks for bringing it in.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the information.
This sword, a masterpiece of steel and history, whispers the legacy of warriors who once roamed the vast Sahara. The guest acquired this sword at a local market for $150, unaware of the remarkable history it carries. This sword originates from Niger, a country in the western part of Africa. It is a Tuareg takuba, a distinctive sword wielded by the nomadic Tuareg warriors. Additionally, it was likely owned by a Tuareg warrior, often carried alongside a lance as a symbol of status and strength.
And as fine and as fancy as this also would have been a status symbol. It would have indicated how important he was as a warrior.
The Tuareg people, a Berber ethnic group, are traditionally nomadic pastoralists. Their territory stretches across the Sahara, from southwestern Libya and Algeria to Niger, Mali, and northern Nigeria. Among its intricate details is the silver inlaid hilt, exquisite leatherwork, and a striking carnelian stone embedded in the design. The carnelian stone, known for its deep red hue, was often believed to offer protection in battle. Warriors carried it as a talisman, trusting in its supposed ability to bring courage and strength. Its presence on this piece adds both historical significance and a touch of mystique. At auction, given the remarkable craftsmanship and well-preserved details of this sword, it would command a significant price of...
And at a good auction, I would expect this to be $800 to $1,200.
Not bad. Not bad at all.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much.
Tucked away in a quiet corner of an antique shop, this sword waited decades for the right hands to claim it once more. Our guest presents a remarkable heirloom, her grandfather's sword, acquired from an antique shop.
Well, my grandfather purchased this near Swindon, England at an antique shop around 1953 when he was stationed there for the Air Force. And that's about all I know. My grandma's had it ever since.
From its design, the appraiser immediately recognizes it as an Indian-made weapon. This is a shamshir, a traditional hunting sword known for its curved blade and exquisite craftsmanship. The intricate metalwork on the hilt is known as koftgari, a technique where gold is inlaid into an iron surface, creating stunning decorative patterns. At the pommel, we see a beautifully crafted parrot, with a gracefully sculpted goose head positioned just above it. The floral patterns on the handle, delicately inlaid with gold, further showcase the exceptional artistry behind this piece. One of the most fascinating elements is a lengthy inscription along the handle, a Persian poem intricately woven into the design. The blade itself is a masterpiece, defying the fine-grained characteristic of Damascus steel, also known as watered steel, prized for its strength and beauty. While the sword remains in decent condition, the blade would benefit from thorough oiling and careful cleaning. After restoration, a magnificent piece like this would carry an auction estimate of...
It's worth about $3,000.
Okay.
A blade forged in fire and history, this sword carries the echoes of warriors long past. The guest brought in this sword that has been in her family for generations. The appraiser, who was fascinated by this sword, ascertained that this sword was actually from the Mexican War era, probably carried by either a higher NCO or an officer. Among this sword's intricate features is its gilt brass hilt, with foliate designs throughout the panoply of arms.
And we move up here with this wonderful eagle and dolphin heads. The grip is silver washed, it's not solid silver. Nicely engraved, and we end up with the helmet here and the chains.
Okay.
When the chain on it is flipped over, it's engraved on it that it was made by N.P. Ames in Chicopee, Massachusetts. Ames Manufacturing Company was a manufacturer of swords, tools, and cutlery, as well as an iron and bronze foundry. Although this sword's blade has incurred some wear, we can still see the Ames manufacturer's markings alongside intricate engravings. Despite its age, the blade retains much of its original elegance and historical significance. At auction, this sword would command a significant price of
Around $1,500 to $2,000, maybe a little bit higher.